Frankie Edgar is a legend in a weight class, a two-time champion with impressive performances in two separate weight classes. Frankie is easily one of the best to ever do it. Rocky is booked to get into the octagon for the 35th time at UFC 281, and he's left us with a treasure chest of highlights from the 23 victories he's amassed over the years. Let's look at some of Edgar's best moments in martial arts, starting off with where it all began. Edgar was a teenager when The Ultimate Fighter made its debut on television and was fascinated by how the smaller jiu-jitsu practitioners were beating bigger fighters. Spurred on by his competitive spirit and desire to overcome the limitations society told him his height brought, Frankie got into wrestling and was one win away from being an All-American. A year later, he was 6-0 in his MMA career when he was called to try out for the 5th season of TUF. He didn't make the cut for the show, instead making it into the UFC directly. But a finale with Nate Diaz and Edgar would have been an instant classic. His debut for the world's leading fight promotion wasn't a cakewalk though. UFC 67 booked Edgar to fight Tyson Griffin, and Rocky was promptly ahead on the cards until the final minute of the final round when he got caught in a knee bar. 60 seconds is a long time to survive in a submission like that, and even though Edgar said later he heard his knee pop twice, he toughed it out and got the decision victory. From there, Edgar would go on an unbeaten streak in the lightweight decision up until 2008. Now for Frankie's first loss and how it changed his approach to MMA. Edgar quickly established himself as a force to be reckoned with in the division, despite still working as a plumber part-time. He had no steady income, no proper coaching or gym, and was very far from the lifestyle a professional fighter should have. Edgar was just floating, pinballing from training season to training season, and not committing fully to the lifestyle he had chosen. The consequences showed themselves when he was simply outclassed by Gray Maynard the first time the two fought. Maynard was a superior, more polished wrestler and dominated Rocky on the ground to win the fight 30-27. This forced Edgar to take a step back and reevaluate his approach to the sport. He started training with Ricardo Almeida, his jiu-jitsu coach, and the Renzo Gracie team. Edgar really benefited from the proficiency on the ground acquired through these coaches, but was pushed to the next level when he made the decision to become a full-time MMA fighter. Quitting his day job allowed him to properly work on his conditioning, and Frankie has always had a fast pair of hands. These are skills he would really need when he worked his way back up the ladder to challenge the Prodigy. Next up, Edgar's first title and his brace over BJ Penn. Before this modern generation of lightweight came along, and even before Edgar, BJ Penn was considered the greatest, most versatile fighter on the entire UFC roster. One-punch knockout power, inhumane dexterity, and a wrestling acumen to utilize that flexibility made Penn an incredibly daunting champion to take the belt away from. Edgar got his shot in 2010 at the UFC's only open-air event in Abu Dhabi, UFC 112. Frankie was brought in as another young lamb to the slaughter in Penn's increasing list of conquests, but Edgar had come in second place way too many times in his life to be denied. Wrestling nationals in high school, state-level wrestling tournaments, All-American tryouts, Edgar just had enough. He got the belt wrapped around his waist and was #1 in the world at last. So great was this upset, and such a dominant fighter was BJ, that a rematch was booked instantly. This is where Frankie separated himself from just someone who won the belt. His mindset and game improved massively once he got confirmation of his skills. The second time he faced BJ, it wasn't even close. Moving on, when he faced his nemesis in a fight of the year. Edgar vs. Maynard 2 is printed in the history books of MMA as one of the most competitive title fights of all time, and Frankie doesn't even remember much of it. The champion was dropped early in round 1 and survived a bull rush of strikes for Maynard, but only remembers sitting in his stool before round 5, wondering where the rounds went and why his ankle hurt so bad. Our memory serves us well though, and both Maynard and Edgar proceeded to have their moments in the fight. Frankie put Maynard on the ground, scored nasty ground and pound on more than one occasion to pull back some of the points lost in the first round. He succeeded, and the fight was declared a majority draw. It wasn't the definitive decision everyone was looking for, especially considering the champion had not really avenged his only loss. But it was a great fight. Both fighters got Fight of the Night bonuses, and it was declared Fight of the Year later on. Next up, Redemption Day for Rocky. The trilogy was scheduled to be settled at UFC 136 in 2011, and it started off much like the second fight. Maynard staggered Edgar early with a hook and unleashed a barrage of strikes. Once more, Frankie survived and went on to knock Maynard out in the 4th round. It was extremely significant for Edgar's legacy as a champion to properly avenge his first loss and silence all those questioning his reign after the draw in their second fight. Edgar knew it too, and has never been as animated and jubilant after a victory as he was when he climbed up the cage screaming, kissed the camera, and bloodied the lens. He later reported that aside from becoming the champion, champ, that winning was the most gratifying of his career. Maynard and Frankie have nothing but love for each other now, and even back then exchanged congratulations and pleasantries online after their fight. The two have a special bond resting on 3 fights together, and Frankie visits Maynard to this day whenever he's in town. Let's talk about all the greats Frankie has fought. After his trilogy with Maynard, Frankie lost both of his fights against a lightweight legend and former champion Benson Henderson, a man proving too long for Edgar. He then lost to Jose Aldo back in 2013 to make it 3 straight losses. The champion that he is, Frankie bounced back to go on a 5-fight win streak. Amongst those scalps were some impressive names, like future champion Charles Oliveira, the California Kid, Uriah Faber, and Chad Mendes. By the time Frankie lost his second title fight to Jose Aldo in 2016, he had fought everyone who was anyone in the lightweight division at the UFC and solidified his position in the Hall of Fame. Additionally, Frankie doesn't just roll over. The natural progression for fighters like Frankie after they've crossed their prime fighting age is to set them as gatekeepers for younger talent. They become tools, names that can be thrown up against up-and-coming fighters to help them make a name for themselves. Edgar didn't care about all that. Future #1 contender Yair Rodriguez was just coming off a victory over BJ Penn and was matched up with Edgar as his next bump in competition. The step was too big for Yair though, and the doctors forbade him to continue the fight after 2 rounds of Frankie beat down. After that, the sport just evolved too much for a fighter from a different age. Edgar only managed 2 wins in his 7 fights. Granted, he was facing a very high level of competition, of course. But if you're not fighting to be champ, why are you fighting? That question may be the crux of Edgar's retirement contemplations. Finally, Rocky's upcoming retirement fight. Frankie deserves a worthy send-off, and there couldn't be a better place than Madison Square Garden, virtually in the backyard of his home neighborhood. It guarantees his close friends and family would be able to attend, and the Garden is a magical place to perform at any point in your career. As for the opponent, Frankie was pretty open about wanting bantamweight legend Dominick Cruz. The commentator is in a similar stage of his career as Frankie and presents an interesting matchup stylistically. They both have strong wrestling backgrounds, but utilize fast footwork and innate speed during stand-up exchanges. It would have been fun, but Cruz getting knocked out a couple of months ago means he can't fight again too soon. With that option gone, Frankie told his manager Mark Henry to book anyone who'd take him, and Chris Gutierrez answered the call. Whoever the opponent and whatever the result, it's going to be a special night for Frankie. It's been one heck of a career, and the Garden is the perfect place to cap it off. He trained a couple of blocks away with Gracie and fought on the first ever MMA card at MSG. That's a wrap for this video. How do you feel about Frankie Edgar calling it a career at 41? And did we miss your favorite Rocky moment? Let us know in the comments below. Consider liking the video if you enjoyed it, and don't forget to subscribe for more quality MMA content.